Alright, on the kit that you're going to get to do these accumulators on the 6T70s, the Sonex tool number is 124740-TL40. And in the kit, you're going to get this plate. You're going to get this guide. You're going to get all these bolts. Now, so far I've only used 2. I just throw these off to the side. You're going to get a line-up pin. And you're going to get a reamer. Take care with your reamer that you don't screw it up. Don't be dropping it. Don't turn it backwards. Always turn forwards. Okay. Get our reamer in there. On this plate it says 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, and then over here is number 4. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, this is 1, 3, and 6. So you're going to take your guide and you're going to do the step up and put that in there, and then you're going to put your guide pin. Set that in there. Then you're going to find 2 holes that line up that you can tighten down. And if you want to look in the paperwork that they send with it, they kind of show you about how it's going to be sitting. I just put it in there and I start turning until I find 2 holes that will line up. Alright, and I've gone past it. Here's one. Here's one. And this one seems to be the one I have the most trouble with. You'd think I'd figured it out by now, but okay, I never could find it on the number 1, so I put it on number 4. It really doesn't matter as long as you get the thing to line up. So once you get it to line up on 2 of the bolt holes, 2 is all you need. Get you an Allen head. This is 3/16, I believe. Just kind of snug it down. You don't need to get super tight. You just need the thing to not move. Once you get it in there, you want your guide to be able to twist and move in and out freely. Get you some kind of tapping fluid. WD-40, whatever you want to use. Make sure you get some of that down into there. Alright, it's better if you have a holder for it. If you don't, and you just put it in your drill. If it's a little off center, just let the drill work around. The reamer will be straight up and down. The guide will keep it straight up and down. If this wobbles, it's no big deal. You want to go slow, keep it under a couple hundred RPM, You don't want to push down on it hard. I mean, you can put a little bit of pressure, but not very much. The slower you go, the less pressure you use, the better the finish will be. You'll feel it quick cutting. Right there, it just quit. I'm down at the bottom. Just make sure that it is all the way cleaned out around. Do not turn your reamer backwards. Alright. Go clean this out. Go on to the next one. And then just do that until they're all done. So I'll be back once I get them all done. Okay, once you get them all done, this is Witt's number, I believe, S25741LOK. Sonax's number is 124740-40K. That's for the 3 accumulator one. They make another one for the 6. They're the same, so if you can only get the 3 and you got a 6, just buy 2 3s. If you got a 3 and all you can get is 6, just buy the 6 one and use only 3 out of it. Once you get it, put the open end of the accumulator facing up. You want to make sure that they are floating in and out of there nicely. If you'll notice that there's a recess in this area right here, make sure that that accumulator does go all the way down. First time I did it, I didn't have my reamer set up quite right, and it wasn't going down all the way. Felt like it was, but it wasn't. It was just a little ridge sitting there, and it was sitting up. So make sure that it does go all the way past that recess there. And then once you do, just put your spring on top. Get your separator plate, put your separator plate on. If you desire, there's in your kit, you're going to get plastic hold downs, just pop them in there. They just push in. Alright, that's all there is to that. We'll be back when we get the rest of our parts and we can go on to the rebuild. Okay, when you get these Techems that still have the pressure switches in it, the Gen 1s, they're going to blow out. These little films that are in here, that one's blown up, this one's totally gone. There's a little plastic piece that goes underneath there. Make sure that those are in there. You can buy all that now if need be, and you lose them. Before, you couldn't get them, but you can now. The big thing is that when you get one that's totally blown out like that, you got to make sure and get all that plastic out of there. It's easier to get them out before they disintegrate totally. So make sure that you got the whole ring out. When it's disappeared like this one, you're going to have to get it to come out, coax it out so that you can get behind it and get the whole thing out. Okay, this one kind of popped up, so we'll see if it'll fall out. There we go. Otherwise, I was just going to leave it in there. If you notice down in here, you got the 3 little fingers sticking out. There's a flat side, and there's a side that has little recessed areas. That fits down around those little fingers, so make sure it's sitting down in there properly. In your kit, you're going to get 5 of these rubbers and 5 of the films in your zip kit, not in your rebuild kit. In your rebuild kit, you're only going to get the rubber, which makes no sense to me. Alright, once you get that up, once you get the new films, cup it like that and then stick it back into that groove that you dug the other one out of. Just kind of leave it up like that. In your tool kit that you get with it, you need this piece, a little leg. Go into the area where you pushed it, recessed in. Get up underneath that lip, then just give it a twist. Twist it around in circles and make sure that you get all the way around and that it's in the center when you get done pushing that down. See, that one moved off. Alright, this one's wanting to be difficult. I'm going to have to coax it back into position. If we can't get it there without screwing it up, that's why you get an extra one. Normally they don't pop over there like that on me, but I guess it's kind of a good thing that it did on this one. That way I can show you what can happen. It is wanting to be difficult. Okay, I believe that's in place now. If it's not all the way down in there properly, your rubber's not going to sit properly. And then you're just going to get the same code you was getting before. Okay, once you get that, go ahead and put this in my extras. Go ahead and put the rubber in here also, since I'm not going to need that. And you need this piece. And then you need to get some lube. Lube your rubber up really good. Then you need this piece, and you're going to push that rubber up inside of there. Just like so. Take it, set it flat, and then just push the piston down. And it should push your rubber all the way in, and make sure it is sitting in there flat. Let's see if I can do one improperly so you can see what that looks like. Try to kind of hold this up out of position. Yep, it still went in there properly. Try it again. Okay, there, that's not in there properly. Sometimes you can just take it, push it, and it'll pop in there, but my advice would be to take it back out, start all over. Alright. Alright, they sent me the wrong kit, so we can't finish yet. This is ready to put on other than the gasket. And I'd actually forgot that we were filming a rebuild of this, so let me get this apart. Got this section of valve body with this separator plate. This section of valve body. Check balls. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. manual valve with this link facing that way. Our accumulator body. We got 2 short bolts go down here. Three longer bolts. And this plate has a bonded gasket on it. Don't try to take it off, just leave it. If it's screwed up, then you want to replace this plate. You have 5 of the longer bolts, 1 of the shorter ones. The short one goes here, the long ones go here. Make sure that your plate is lined up. You can just eyeball it. Work from the center out. Okay, we are at a standstill until we get the right parts here. So we'll be back when it happens. Okay, everything is different between the Gen 1 and the Gen 2. So you have to know what you're working on. 2013 was the split year for the Gen 1 and the Gen 2. You could have either one. So you have to make sure and identify, this is a D-shaped ring here, what you have, because like I said, everything is different, even the case is different. So it may all look the same, but it's not the same. And you go mixing this stuff up and you're going to be screwed. D-shaped ring here. All of these are D-shaped. The top slot is for our snap ring. Lube this up nice and good. Alright, and on this I use the press to press this down into place. It seems to work very well, rather than trying to get it in any other way. I mean, it just pops right into place when you do that. This narrower side goes down and our balance piston goes on top. So that's That's going to go in, and this is going to go on. And while I'm over there, I'm going to go ahead and do the rest of this. So we need our cushion plate, or if you're doing the Sonex deal, you need to put that on here. Put a steel on after that. Then a clutch and alternate up so you get to your pressure plate. Yes, I put my clutches on dry. It's one of the most common questions I get. Why do you do it? I've never seen the difference doing it and not doing it. If you want to soak your clutches, soak your clutches. It's just not that big of a deal. Everybody makes more of a deal of it than there is. Put your snap ring on. Then when you press this down, that's going to move that up so that snap ring cannot pop out. If when you get done here, you can get that snap ring out of the front, you have done something wrong for sure. Used the wrong parts or something. Alright, here again we have a wide side and a narrow side. The narrow side is going to face up. We have a slot right here. We have a tab right here. Those have to line up. When you press this down, make sure that you go just enough to get the snap ring in, because if you keep going, you will snap this off and you might crack your drum. So be careful with that. Here's our snap ring for the piston on here, and you notice that there's a taper to the snap ring, the tips of it. You want the short end up towards you. Don't forget your snap ring for the 3.5 reverse, short end of the taper up towards you again. Alright, we need this bearing. Need this hub. Make sure that you change all your bushings. Start off with the steel and alternate up to our pressure plate. Pressure plate goes with the step up and a snap ring. And they don't give any specifications for clearances. They assume you use the right parts, everything's going to come out okay. Okay, on your sealing rings that go on here, you don't need to take this off of here. But on your sealing rings, just take them and stretch them until you can work them around and get them into the groove. Once you get them into the groove, you can use just a hose clamp. I use a bushing, so I do them all at the same time. I split the bushing in half so it goes around it, and then I put a hose clamp on it and leave it on, and it resizes them until I'm ready to put it on. This spring that's down in here, this is a Gen 1. It's got no color to it. The Gen 2 is red. Now you can swap this cover out. There's supposed to be a problem with that little spring and ball that's in there. I've only run into the problem one time, and it just doesn't seal properly. Okay, here's a cutout right here. This portion of the piston needs to line up right there. I use the Adaptacase press on this. It works very well. That's what it was designed for doing the drums on units like this.
Hey man,
so
you can just come over and pay whenever.
Okay.
I parked it right there, so you're probably going to remove it, so you know where you are.
Okay,
All
appreciate it.
Okay.
I'll be over in a minute. Alright, this piston goes in. Return spring, bell valve spring goes with the dish down, snap ring on the outside, snap ring on the inside. Press that in and we'll be back. Okay, like I said, GM does not want you taking this pump apart, so there is no information on it. Make sure there's no point in taking it past this point. If it's screwed up, you're buying the whole thing. We have a check ball, goes in here. I've never seen a bad pump, by the way. 312 thousandths on the check ball. And you have this barrel shaped spring that goes on top. You have a rubber and a plastic wiper that goes on the outside there. If you got the notion to change it, I would think twice about it. I have been running into a bunch of these on any of these that take this, that they're too tall. So I'll always just rerun mine. Like I said, rubber and the ring that goes there. There is a bushing that goes down in the bottom there. We have our rotor. It goes with the spline side down and the dot up. Our shaft, actually forgot to put our ring in the bottom. Alright, then our vanes, and you'll notice on the vanes you can see where they were riding against those rings that are down there. Just put that back towards the way it was. Okay, a ring goes on top. Another ring goes on top of that. There is another bushing. You're not going to get that in the kit. So if it's bad, you're buying a pump. This goes on just like so. And this needs to be pressed in. So I'm going to do that. And then let me go press this in. I'll be back. And our plate goes on top. And our 30 Torx bolts go in here. My internet's down at the moment. I do have it. What I figured up at one point what these bolts were supposed to be, and I have it written down, or actually I have it on the computer, but it's in the cloud and I cannot access the alternate server, so I cannot get to that information at the moment. Once I do, we'll tighten it down. The seal goes on here, and our filter filter, we're not going to go. There we go. Our filter sits in there just like so. Alright, 5/30 seconds punch. I'm getting this hole right here. Knock your front seal out. Knock your axle seal out. Right on the front seal, and put a bit of 3M weather strip adhesive. Around this. It don't take much. On our axle seal, I have a bushing driver that's pretty dang close to the outside diameter of this. Drive it in until it stops and I flip it over. Okay, up here on the pump is this tube assembly. 25 Torx here, 10 millimeters here. There's this gasket that goes in there. Make sure that you get it facing the right direction. Need you to go away. Okay, so the gasket, the little legs face up, the little raised areas face out. Come on, start in there. Alright, you have to put these into a bolt calculator because they don't even mention anything about changing this gasket. So when you put it into a bolt calculator, it comes out to about 89 inch. After those are tight, you tighten these down. There's a sealing ring on here. Do just like you do all the others, just stretch it out by hand unless you got the tool. If you got the tool, then just it'll stretch it out and you'll resize it with the tool. I don't, so I stretch it out by hand, put a hose clamp on it to tighten it down and resize it. There is a washer on here, make sure it's in there. I just leave it in there. You have a washer on each side. Okay, there's a shiny side, well, a brighter side and a dull side. The dull side goes up. If you have a blue link on your chain, it will face up. I have seen them and I have not seen them. And then on this gear, there's a dot, it faces up. They're sitting down where they need to be. This is going to flip over on top. .13 millimeters on this. These are 108 inch-pounds, I believe. On the early ones, there was a bolt hole here and it was threaded. At some point they got rid of the bolt, but the hole was still there and it was still threaded. And then at another point, they got rid of the hole, but the threads was still there. And then eventually they quit putting all of it in. And you can leave that bolt out if you want to, it's no big deal. Or you, if you have the hole, just stick it in there. Either way, it does not matter. Then we can put our pump assembly in with our filter. Okay, lost a bolt somewhere. We have our oil baffle. It takes a 10 millimeter just like the pump does. And I gotta find my bolt. I don't know what happened to it. It's not in my basket with my other bolts. Once I find out where it's at, I'll be back. Alright, I was wrong about these. I knew it didn't seem right. This is 28 foot-pounds on this. 9 foot-pounds on these, 9 foot-pounds, 9 foot-pounds, which is 108 inch-pounds. So make sure it's all right. There's a seal that goes in here. Make sure before you change that seal that you check your seal and make sure that it fits snug on your shaft. Make sure it's showing up on there. If it does not fit snug, don't change it, because it needs to fit snug. It will not work properly. Also, down in here, I should have showed that to you. Where this yellow mark is, there's a lube hole. And on your bushing, you have a notch. That notch has to line up with that lube hole. You're going to want to have a press for this. You can put it in with an arbor press. You're not going to get it out with an arbor press. But it's very, very tight. You really want a regular press for that. And you can put this in on your arbor press if you want. Lube that up. I'm going to put a little lube on our bearings. This seal here, if you want to change this out, my advice to you is do not do it. You're going to wish you was never born. You take that thing out of there. In order to get that back in there, you got to take this race out, and it is a pure son of a bitch to do. If you're going to take it out, you can take it out with a slide hammer and one of these. Get your race out first. My advice to you is to go ahead and buy you a new bearing and race for here and cut that thing in half and take it out that way. Otherwise, you're gonna wish you was never put on this earth. Go ahead and lube that up a little bit. Lube up our diff. The shim for preload on this transfer gear is on this side, and for the differential is on down here. Let's see where we're at. Our bearing for here is this bearing. It's going to face down. Our seal for here is this little dude. Go ahead and put our differential in. Put our transfer gear in with the park side up. We want our little tube that seals this tube. As long as that seal is grabbing hold of this tube, which everyone I've ever seen is, you don't really need to change it. So don't put yourself through that. Okay, get our gasket. There is a seal that goes just like this one over here on the other side that seals this. You got your axle seal for this side. For the pump here, there's a seal that goes up inside the case. Make sure that this is on there. I'm going to slide my case half on. Let's see here. Here's our seal. It's oil trough right here. This is the second design. The first design has 2 holes. You can swap this out. It's one of the few parts that you can swap out from Gen 1 to Gen 2, and it'll be okay. Don't go try and swap all the other stuff out. Lube up my bearings. Alright, you can do this how you want to. Me personally, I don't flip this over and tighten all these bolts down right now. I just stick a couple up in there to keep it in place, and I will tighten these down and put the rest in when I get the case flipped over. If you feel the need to do it the other way, then do it the other way. Okay, I'm gonna have to change camera angles, otherwise we're not gonna be able to see up in top. These case bolts are 28 foot-pounds again. And when we come back, we'll be facing down into the case. Okay, make sure we're recording here. Lube up where your piston goes. Lube up your piston. And get a little bit more lube on the situation. Alright, not only make sure they give you the generation of pistons that you need, but make sure that they didn't give you 6F50 pistons, because they're different. Your opening of your snap ring bevel plate goes dish down. Opening of your snap ring goes after 12 o'clock. Just pop it in. Do this without hitting the camera. Alright, make sure that you are all the way up in that groove. Wanting to be a snot. If we can keep this up in there. Okay, we got our hub. And I'm spline in there. We got this bearing's gonna sit just like so. We got this sun shell. We have cushion plate with the little legs going to sit right here. Steel. These clutches. Okay, sprag assembly. I usually mark mine so that I can get it back in there quickly and don't have to mess around with it. It will only go in one way. Check my clearance here. Make sure my sprag is turning counterclockwise and locking clockwise. We have our snap ring with the little legs going to sit right there. Make sure we are all the way up into the groove. We have this planetary. Okay, we got this bearing flat side up. We got this bearing with the legs facing down. This planetary. The ID mark of our sun gear facing up. This bearing with the lip facing down. This bearing facing up. Planetary end. We have our pressure plate with the step down, the little leg facing over here again. These clutches. Pressure plate. The last steel on top. Then our cushion plate. And we have our pressure plate. These clutches. Steel, and then our cushion plate, our sun gear, our sun shell on top, this bearing on here, splitter drum in, our bearing on top, this side down, gasket. Take this off. our speed sensor with an O-ring. Where's my hole? Make sure we're getting this on camera. Alright, this is the bolt for the speed sensor. 9 foot-pounds on it, which was 108 inch-pounds. These are the bolts for end cover. Same torque on those. Take your speed sensor wire and feed it through. Okay, we're going to tighten this down in a star pattern again. I'm going to have to figure out how I'm going to work this camera for you to see the valve body side of it. I think what I'm going to have to do is what I've done on a couple others. I'll have to explain what I'm going to do, show you kind of where it's going to be, turn it to where I can get to it and do it, and then show you the finished product. So once we come back, the camera's going to be back down where it was, and we'll continue on. Okay, in this spot right here is this little rubber seal. Put your little grease on it to make sure it doesn't fall out. On the top up here is their lever seal. The early ones were rubber like this. The late ones are metal. These you can take out with the GM linkage seal tool that you've done for all the others, the short one that you can get off the Snap-on truck. The metal clad ones, you're going to want to take this out. And the way I take it out is I have an adjustable heel bar, and I get right in here on this nail right here, just pop that out. And then to put it in, you just take a punch and drive it in. Just, you don't have to drive it all the way in, just enough to where it's not going to fall out. And pull this out. You're actually going to want, if you got the metal one, you're going to want to do this before you put it together, because sometimes this will fall out and it's a pain to get it back up into the park mechanism. You can do it, but it's a pain. So do this before you put the two case halves on, in case it all falls apart. You can get it back together, but pop that out. Get you a baby heel bar in there, or a screwdriver, and try not to ding up where the seal goes, and pop that seal out. Drive the new one in, stick this all back in, then put your case halves together. This one here we can use the lever seal tool. I'll do that later. This side faces down. You're going to want to work it around the flats right there so you don't cut it before you go driving it in, and put a little bit of lube on it. Since you're not going to be able to see that, I'll do that later. Input speed sensor has a 10mm bolt on it. These are 9 foot-pounds again. And when I move this over, I'll tighten it down. We need to put our gasket onto our solenoid assembly. There's little tabs that go in these little holes, and then the dowel pins also kind of presses onto that. Alright, now our valve body. Let's talk about that. 10mm bolts. Well, depending on what year you have. These two are always 10mm, and they are (2" 383. The other ones are 2" 787. And we're going to put our valve body on and our manual valve. This part right here has to line up in that right there. These shorter bolts go over here, like I said. The longer bolts go around here. And I'll show that to you once we get it up in there. Okay, our manual valve is in there. The bolts are right here, and these two right here. Now, we have a detent that goes up here. This little knob has to fit right there. Our bolt goes right here. This roller has to fit inside the neutral switch, or your neutral switch will not work properly. Once that's tightened down, we've got to put our Tecum on. Now here again, depending on what year you got, is what bolts you're going to have. Tecum's going to go on this way. These bolts right here are 8mm, or these. This bracket or neutral switch has to go underneath, the wire has to go underneath here. Then our bracket goes in here and it's going to wrap up around, and 2 bolts are going to go through that. The later model ones have a rubber seal that goes around here. So if you got that, make sure that that's in there, because that cools your CPU down. There are different size bolts that go in the center, and it's kind of hard to screw it up. I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. They'll either be too long or they won't even reach. So once I get that in there, we'll be back. Okay, all these bolts, 9 foot-pounds. All these bolts, the case bolts and back cover bolts and the pan bolts, you're probably going to want to tighten those down a couple times, because they will compress and it'll loosen up on you a little bit. So do it a couple times. Neutral switch plugs in down here. Lock it with the tab. The input speed sensor comes up and around, locks into right there. Output speed sensor loops in through right here, locks in right there. Rubber gasket on your pan. The 2 studs go here and here. The rest of them are regular bolts. 9 foot-pounds again on those. 28 foot-pounds on the case bolts. And all of that you're going to work, you know, from the crisscross center out. One other thing. The dipstick does have an O-ring on it. This little dude right here, so change that out. Put your seal on here. That's pretty much it for this one. Okay, one thing I did forget. When you're going to put your torque converter in, you want to set the tranny up with the face up, just like this. Get you a couple studs in your torque converter. You want to lower your, go ahead and grease up your input shaft where the O-ring is going to ride on the tip, and then take your torque converter and set it down in straight and wiggle it into place and make sure it's all the way down before you flip the transmission over onto its side and put it on the jack.